My family gave me a black apron instead of a seat at my own family's Christmas table. I had built the whole night they wanted to show off. So I quietly took back my staff, my system, and my name. Then one QR code made every guest see the truth. My name is Brynna Caldrow. I was 32 years old when my family handed me a black apron on Christmas Eve and told me I would not be sitting with them because the guests needed serving. My brother was about to announce himself as the future of our family's old winter inn. His fiancée's rich parents were coming. 44 people had been invited to Frostmere House for what my father called the Snowglass Christmas Supper. The kind of night with candlelight, polished silver, pine garlands, expensive coats, and perfect smiles. They wanted me behind the room, invisible, moving plates and pouring water, while my brother sat at the head table taking credit for work he had never done. I smiled when they gave me the apron. I even folded it neatly over my arm. But by dessert time, every guest in that room was scanning a QR code that told the truth. By morning, my brother had no fiancé, my father had no investor, and Frostmere House had no perfect Christmas left to sell. Frostmere House sat on the north edge of Harthwick, Wisconsin, where the roads curled through pine trees, and the snow made everything look kinder than it really was. From the outside, our family inn looked like something printed on a Christmas card. Stone chimney, wide porch, green shutters, brass lanterns, and 2 old maples wrapped in white lights every December. People drove from Madison and Milwaukee to take photos under the Frostmere sign. Brides posed on the front steps. Retired couples booked anniversary dinners in the glass room. Local business owners loved to say, "The Caldrows know hospitality." What they meant was that my father knew how to shake hands, my mother knew how to smile, my brother knew how to stand in good lighting, and I knew how to make sure nothing fell apart behind them. I ran the schedules, called the vendors, fixed the seating charts, hired the servers, paid the deposits, saved the broken nights, and disappeared before anyone important asked who had done the work. I did not grow up wanting to be invisible. When I was little, I loved Frostmere. I loved the sound of boots on the porch in winter, the smell of cedar in the hallway, the old bell above the front desk, the big fireplace where guests warmed their hands after skiing at Briar Ridge. I used to hide under the registration desk and listen to my parents greet people. My father, Vance Caldrow, had a voice that filled a room even when he whispered. My mother, Meryl, had a soft laugh that made strangers feel chosen. My brother, Keaton, had my father's smile and my mother's timing, and somehow that was enough for everyone to call him charming. I had the lists. I had the keys. I had the memory for which guest needed a dairy-free dessert, which linen company was always late, which pipe froze under the east wing sink, and which light switch controlled the porch lantern that flickered every time the temperature dropped below 10 degrees. People praised the house. They praised my father. They praised Keaton. They praised the old Caldrow name. I became the part of the house no one named. By 26, I had started my own event company, Northlight Tables. It was small at first, just table design and staffing for local bridal showers, office lunches, and anniversary dinners. Then it grew. I learned how to build a room from nothing. I could make a school gym look elegant. I could calm a mother of the bride with one hand while texting a replacement florist with the other. I could look at a guest list and see where 2 divorced people should not be seated, where the shy aunt needed a kind neighbor, and where the investor should sit if the host wanted money by the end of dessert. People think hospitality is about smiling. It is not. Hospitality is carrying panic so quietly that no one sees it in your hands. Northlight Tables became known for that kind of calm. We were not huge, but we were respected. We had staff, we had contracts, we had a storage unit full of linens, glassware, copper stands, menu holders, portable heaters, service trays, and emergency kits. We had clients who paid on time, except, of course, my family. My father always called my company Brynna's Little Setup, even when Northlight made more reliable money than Frostmere House did. Frostmere was beautiful, But beauty does not pay a plumber. The roof needed work. The wine fridge died before a Valentine's dinner. The boiler failed during a snowstorm weekend with 12 guests in the East Wing. Every time something went wrong, my father looked at me with that tired, noble face he used when he wanted me to feel guilty before I even said no. "This house has our name on it," he would say. "Family serves before family sits." That was his favorite line. It sounded honorable if you did not listen too closely. It sounded like sacrifice, tradition, loyalty. But in our family, it meant Keaton sat, my father spoke, my mother smoothed things over, and I served. The rule never reached everyone equally. It moved in one direction, from me outward. Keaton was 35 and had been preparing to lead Frostmere for almost 10 years. Preparing, in his case, meant walking through the dining room in a fitted jacket, telling guests the history of the staircase, and posting photos of table settings he had not arranged. He was not stupid. That would have made him easier to forgive. He knew exactly how much he did not know, and he learned how to stand close to the people who did. If I built the room, he entered it. If I fixed the crisis, he announced that the family had handled it. If I booked the staff, he said, "My team." He had a gift for standing near finished work and looking like the reason it existed. My parents called it leadership. I called it theft. Though for years, I only called it that inside my own head. The first time I understood how deep it went was during a winter wedding when I turned 30. I had planned to have dinner with 2 friends in Madison. Nothing big, just pasta, wine, and one night where my phone could stay in my purse. At 4 in the afternoon, 3 hours before the ceremony, Frostmere's hired coordinator quit after a fight with the bride's father. My mother called me crying. "Please, Brynna, your father is losing his mind. Keaton cannot handle this alone." I drove to Frostmere in my birthday dress, changed into flats in the parking lot, and ran the entire wedding until after 2 in the morning. I pinned the bride's veil, moved the ceremony inside when the wind turned dangerous, replaced a missing cake knife, found the groom's grandmother's medication bag, and cleaned red wine out of the cream runner before anyone saw it. At midnight, Keaton raised a champagne glass and told the guests, "At Frostmere, we treat every event like family." Everyone clapped. I was in the coat room holding a trash bag full of broken glass. That should have been enough, but families like mine do not take everything at once. They take it in polite pieces. A favor here, a deposit there, a Saturday night you cannot get back, a thank you that never comes because they believe duty cancels gratitude. My business partner, Pippa Alder, saw it before I did. Pippa was the kind of woman who could read a contract faster than most people read a menu. She handled staffing for Northlight and had a face that changed only when someone lied badly. Every time Frostmere called, she would ask, "Are they paying us this time, or are we donating another piece of your spine?" I always had an answer ready. They were tight this month. It was just family. They would settle after the season. I knew the excuses sounded weak. But guilt has a voice, and in my head, it sounded exactly like my mother saying, "Your father is under so much pressure." 3 weeks before Christmas, my father called a family meeting in the Frostmere dining room. Snow pressed against the windows, and the big fireplace was burning low. Meryl sat with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Keaton stood near the mantel like he was posing for a magazine about men who inherit things. My father laid a folder on the table and said, "This year's Snowglass supper has to be flawless." I already knew about the supper. Frostmere hosted a small holiday dinner every year for longtime guests, local business owners, and a few families who liked to feel important. Usually, it was 20 people. Usually, I handled it. But this year, my father's eyes were too bright. Keaton smiled too much. I opened the folder. 44 names stared back at me. My father tapped the list with one thick finger. "Niles and Tressa Pell will be there." I looked up. The Pells owned boutique hotels in 3 states and had enough money to turn Frostmere from a tired family inn into a polished winter retreat. Their daughter, Audra, had been engaged to Keaton for 2 months. She was elegant in a way that did not feel fake. Quiet voice, clear eyes, Expensive wool coats, no wasted movement. I actually liked her. That made everything worse. My father continued, Niles is interested in investing, but he needs to see what Keaton can do with the place. We are going to announce Keaton as future operator after dinner. He said it like the future had already signed the paperwork. I asked the obvious question. Who is staffing 44 guests on Christmas Eve? My father looked at me as if I had asked who owned the sky. You are. My mother reached across the table and touched my wrist. Just this one night, honey. Your brother needs it. That was the line that always did the most damage because it came wrapped in softness. Your brother needs it. Your father is tired. The house is struggling. The family name matters. It was never, Brynna, what do you need? I looked at Keaton. He was scrolling on his phone, probably texting Audra some version of the event that made him sound busy. I asked, Is Northlight being contracted? My father's face tightened. Do not make this cold. It is Christmas. Pippa would have laughed at that. Money was cold when I asked for it, but warm and family-shaped when they needed me to spend it. The next day, I found the seating chart on the printer beside the front desk. I was not looking for it. I was looking for vendor confirmations. But there it was, 2 pages with my brother's neat little edits in blue ink. The head table had Vance, Merrill, Keaton, Audra, Niles Pell, Tressa Pell, and 2 local board members. The next tables had longtime guests. The mayor, the church auction chair, a banker, a retired judge, and Keaton's friends. My name was not anywhere. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the staffing sheet behind it. Service lead, Brynna Caldrow. Not daughter, not owner of Northlight Tables, not family, service lead. My mouth went dry, and for a few seconds, I heard nothing but the printer humming in the corner. A person can survive many insults if they come one at a time. But sometimes, one piece of paper gathers all of them into a shape you cannot ignore. I carried the chart into Keaton's office, which had once been the linen closet before my father gave it to him and called it Progress. He was sitting behind a desk he never used, looking at fabric samples he had not chosen. I put the seating chart down. Where am I sitting? He glanced at it and shrugged. You'll be moving around. That is not what I asked. Keaton leaned back, annoyed that I was making him use full sentences. Brynna, come on. You are better at this than any hired server. Guests need to know who to ask. So I am staff. He smiled like I was being difficult on purpose. You are a family staff. That is different. I waited for him to hear himself. He did not. Then he added, Tonight is about showing the Pells that we can run a serious hospitality operation. Don't get sensitive over a chair. That evening, I drove back to my apartment above Northlight's small office on Mariner Street. Hearthwick was already half covered in snow. Christmas lights blinked in shop windows. People carried bakery boxes and waved at each other through fogged glass. My phone buzzed before I even took off my coat. It was Pippa. Please tell me Frostmere signed the contract. I said nothing. She exhaled so hard I could hear her patience leave her body. Brynna, they owe us $28,460. I closed my eyes. I knew the number, but hearing it out loud made it heavier. Pippa continued. That includes staffing advances, linen rentals, emergency heater deposits, menu printing, digital guest page hosting, and the glassware replacement from October. I am not sending our people into a Christmas Eve event for free. I told her I would handle it. She said, You always handle it. That is the problem. They do not need a daughter. They need a department. I did not sleep much that night. I sat at my desk with the office lights off and the street lamp throwing pale stripes across the floor. On my laptop were the systems that made Frostmere look like Frostmere. The guest check-in file, the QR program page, the vendor timeline, the staff assignments, the heater rental confirmation, the table numbers, the menu cards, the seating chart, the allergy notes, the bar quantities, the emergency contacts. All of it was under Northlight Tables. All of it had been built by me or paid for through my accounts. My father thought the event belonged to the house because the house had stone walls and a family name. Keaton thought the event belonged to him because he had invited an investor to look at it. But the living parts of that night, the parts that would actually move and feed and guide 44 people, belonged to my company. They had not just forgotten to give me a seat. They had built their table on top of my back. 2 days before Christmas, I overheard Keaton talking to Audra in the glass room. I had gone in to check the candle count, and their voices carried through the half-open French doors. Audra said, "Your sister owns Northlight, right? I saw the name on the program link." Keaton laughed softly, the way men laugh when they want a woman to feel silly for noticing something true. "Brynna handles little details. Northlight is basically family property. She put her name on it for taxes." I froze with my hand on a box of taper candles. Audra said, "Oh, I thought she built it herself." Keaton answered, "She likes being useful. Honestly, she works better when people don't notice her." The candles shifted in the box, and one cracked under my thumb. I looked down at the broken white wax and felt no shock. Shock means part of you still expected better. I had moved beyond that. What I felt was clean, quiet, and final. On Christmas Eve morning, I arrived at Frostmere before sunrise. The building looked peaceful under fresh snow. Every window dark, except the kitchen light my mother always left on. I had not told anyone what I planned to do. Not because I was afraid, but because explanations give people a chance to bargain with your pain. Pippa met me by the side entrance with her van running and coffee in both cup holders. She did not smile. She simply handed me a clipboard and said, "Tell me what comes with us." We did not strip the house. We took only what belonged to Northlight. Our copper menu stands, rented ivory linens, service aprons, table number frames, portable coat tags, check-in tablets, bar trays, backup glassware, 2 portable heaters, and the staff binders with my company information inside. I left the furniture. I left the dishes that belonged to Frostmere. I left the garlands my mother had tied herself. I was not destroying anything. I was removing the lie that my work was part of the wallpaper. Before I left, I went into the dining room. The long tables were bare without my linens. The chairs sat in rows, waiting for a room that would not become what Keaton had promised. On the head table, someone had placed a black server apron folded beside a handwritten note from my brother. "Wear this tonight so guests can find you fast." I picked it up and held it for a moment. It was a good apron, heavy cotton, deep pockets, clean seams. There was nothing wrong with the apron itself. The insult was not the fabric. The insult was that they had chosen it for me instead of a chair. I folded it again, more neatly than he had, and placed it in the center of the head table. Under it, I left a packet. The first page was an invoice summary for Northlight tables. The second page was a formal notice of service withdrawal. The third page was a short letter. The letter said, "Dad, Mom, and Keaton, I will not serve as unpaid staff at an event where my work is being used to erase me. Northlight Tables is withdrawing all unpaid services, rentals, staffing, and digital event management from the Snowglass Christmas Supper. The company balance owed by Frostmere House is $28,460. Until that balance is paid and a contract is signed, you do not have permission to use Northlight materials, staff systems, digital pages, or portfolio records. I am not ruining this night. I am only refusing to hold it together for free, while someone else takes credit. Merry Christmas, Brynna." Then I opened my laptop one last time at the front desk and updated the QR program page. Every printed invitation had that code. Every guest had received it in the email Keaton proudly forwarded as our new digital program, though he had never logged into it once. I did not write anything emotional. I did not mention betrayal or family or the apron. I wrote a professional notice. Northlight Tables is no longer providing staffing, linens, service equipment, digital program management, or event coordination for Frostmere House's Snowglass Christmas Supper due to unpaid invoices and unauthorized use of company materials. Ownership and management of Northlight tables belongs solely to Brynna Caldrow. Current unpaid balance, $28,460. For event inquiries, please contact Northlight Tables directly. It was factual. That was why it was dangerous. If you have ever been handed responsibility without respect, you understand why I did not yell. Sometimes shouting lets people pretend the problem is your tone. A clean boundary gives them nowhere to hide. Would you have stayed for the chair they denied you, or would you have folded the apron and walked out? I know what I chose. I chose the door. By 10 in the morning, I was on the highway to Madison, driving through snow that moved across the road like white smoke. I was not going on vacation. I was not running away to rest under palm trees or disappear somewhere warm. I was going to work. The Ashbourne Hotel had called Northlight 2 nights earlier in a panic because their event manager had tested positive for the flu before a Christmas Eve donor dinner. Pippa had told them we were unavailable because of Frostmere. I called them back before dawn and accepted the job. They sent a contract within 20 minutes. They paid the emergency fee before I left Harthwick. By noon, I walked through the Ashbourne's marble lobby in my black coat, carrying my laptop bag and wearing no apron. A manager named Mr. Ellery shook my hand and said, "Ms. Caldrow, thank you for saving us." I almost laughed because the words felt so unfamiliar. Not Brynna? Can you just help? Not family comes first. Not don't be sensitive. Thank you. At Frostmere, the first crack opened at 11:15 when the temporary servers did not arrive. My mother called Pippa, who let it go to voicemail. My father called me. I watched the phone light up on the Ashbourne's planning table and turned it face down. Keaton texted first. "Where are the staff?" Then, "This is not funny." Then, "Dad is furious." Then, "Audra's parents will be here in 5 hours." I did not answer. My father found the packet at noon. I know because Keaton stopped texting for exactly 7 minutes, and then the messages changed shape. "You left an invoice on the head table? Are you insane? You made this public? Northlight is family. You can't withdraw from your own family." I stared at that last line for a long moment. He still did not understand. I had not withdrawn from my family. I had withdrawn from being their equipment. The afternoon at Frostmere turned into the kind of panic I had spent years preventing. The linens were gone, so my mother pulled mismatched white tablecloths from the old storage closet, some yellowed at the folds, one with a faint wine stain from a rehearsal dinner in 2018. The menu stands were gone, so Keaton printed menus on office paper and folded them into crooked tents. The check-in tablets were gone, so my father wrote names on a legal pad with a pen that kept dying. The coat tags were gone, so guests' coats were stacked across the front parlor sofa. The portable heaters were gone, and the glass room stayed cold near the windows. The staff binders were gone, and no one knew the timing for soup, salad, main course, dessert, toast, investor announcement, or coffee service. My mother tried to make a timeline on the back of an envelope. My father barked orders at a dishwasher who had only agreed to help because his aunt owed Meryl a favor. Keaton, in his perfect navy suit, carried a tray of water glasses with both hands and spilled one down his sleeve. At 5:30, guests began arriving. Harthwick people know how to enter a room and understand its condition before removing their gloves. Tressa Pell did it in 3 seconds. She stepped into the foyer in a silver gray coat, looked at the coat pile, the legal pad check-in, the wrinkled tablecloth visible through the dining room doors, and Keaton's wet cuff. Her face did not change, but her eyes became sharper. Niles Pell stood beside her, calm as a judge. Audra came in behind them, beautiful in a dark red dress, scanning the room for the version of Frostmere Keaton had promised her. "Who is running the floor?" Tressa asked. Keaton smiled too quickly. "I am." At that exact moment, the dishwasher's nephew came out of the kitchen and asked, "Where do you want the soup station?" Keaton looked at my father. My father looked at my mother. My mother looked toward the side hallway, as if I might still appear with a clipboard and save them from the truth. No one answered. By 6, the room was full of polite discomfort. That is worse than open anger, because polite discomfort has witnesses. Guests stood too long with empty hands because no one had organized drinks. The appetizers came out late and uneven. Some tables had candles, others did not. 2 guests with food allergies had to ask 3 different people what was safe to eat. Keaton gave 3 different answers. The mayor's wife scanned the room and whispered to someone from the bank. A retired judge asked where Brynna was, and my father said she had a last-minute work situation. That might have worked if Keaton had not spent weeks telling everyone I was handling the little details. Lies have to be organized too. Without me, even their lies had no timeline. The first QR scan happened at 6:42. A guest named Lenore Vask, who owned the Hearthwick florist shop, pointed her phone at the code printed on the invitation because she wanted to check the dessert menu. I was not there, but I heard the story later from 3 different people, and every version began with the same sentence. Lenore went completely still. She read the page once, then again. Her husband leaned over. Then the banker at table 3 scanned his code. And then Tressa Pell did. Then Niles. Then Audra. The notice spread without anyone needing to raise their voice. Phones came out across the room like little mirrors catching the same flame. Northlight Tables is no longer providing services, unpaid invoices, unauthorized use of company materials. Ownership belongs solely to Brynna Caldrow. Current unpaid balance, $28,460. The room changed after that. Not loudly, not all at once. It changed the way ice changes when the first crack runs underneath it. People began looking at the details differently. The wrinkled linens were no longer an unfortunate mistake. They were evidence. Keaton's confusion was no longer stress. It was exposure. My absence was no longer a work situation. It was the missing center of the room. Tressa Pell set her phone face up on the table and looked at Keaton. "You told us Northlight was part of Frostmere." Keaton opened his mouth, but no clean sentence came out. Niles asked, "Who owns Northlight Tables?" Keaton said, "My sister does, technically." Niles's eyebrows lifted. "Technically?" Audra stared at him as if she had just found a stranger wearing her fiancé's face. My father tried to recover. He stood near the fireplace and raised his voice just enough to pull attention back to himself. "There has been a misunderstanding. Brynna is emotional. She has always been sensitive about business matters." That was when Iona Bellwether stood up. Iona was my father's cousin, 69 years old, narrow-shouldered, silver-haired, and sharper than the knives Frostmere never kept properly sharpened. She had spent 30 years managing luxury inns in Vermont before retiring to Hearthwick, and she had watched my family with the patience of someone who knew every old trick by its smell. She had not been part of my plan. I did not ask her to speak. That made it matter more. She placed her napkin on the table, stood with one hand on the back of her chair, and said, "Vance, sit down before you make this uglier." My father froze. Men like Vance do not expect women like Iona to use their full names in public. Iona turned slowly, letting her eyes move over the room, over the bad menus, the cold windows, the guests holding phones. My brother with one wet sleeve, my mother gripping a serving tray like it was the only solid object left in her life. Then Iona said, "You made her serve the room she built." No one spoke. She continued, calm and clear. "For years, this house has looked better than it was because Brynna stood behind every event and carried the weight of it. She handled the vendors, she managed the staff, she corrected the mistakes, she paid for what this family delayed. And tonight, after building this supper with her systems and her company, you left her off the family table and put her on the service sheet. My mother whispered, "Iona, please." It was not anger. It was fear. Iona looked at her with something almost gentle. "Meryl, I am not trying to hurt you, but you know this is true." My mother's face folded in on itself. She did know. That was the part that hurt. Iona turned to Keaton. "You told people Northlight was family property. It is not. It is Brynna's work, her contracts, her reputation, her staff. You cannot inherit a company by standing beside its owner and smiling." A few guests looked down because truth in public makes people suddenly interested in their shoes. Niles Pell did not look down. He looked directly at Keaton. "Which vendors did you book for tonight?" Keaton swallowed. "We all worked on it." Niles asked, "Which vendors?" Keaton glanced at my father. My father said nothing. Niles continued, "What is the staffing margin on a 44-person dinner at this price point?" Keaton's face went red. "That is not really how we—" "Who insured the event service?" Niles asked. Silence. Audra took off her engagement ring under the table. People later argued about whether everyone saw it. Iona said she did. Tressa definitely did. Keaton saw it last, which felt correct. Audra did not throw it. She did not cry in a dramatic way. She simply placed it beside her water glass and said, "I need air." Keaton reached for her wrist, and she pulled away so gently it was worse than anger. Niles stood with her. Tressa followed. Before leaving, Niles looked at my father and said, "I do not invest in a business where the only competent person has been pushed out of the room." Then the Pells walked out through the foyer where the coats were still piled on the sofa, like proof that no one knew what they were doing. After that, the supper did not end. It dissolved. Some guests left early with careful excuses about weather. Some stayed because small towns love a collapse but prefer to watch it politely. The food came out in the wrong order. Coffee arrived before dessert at 2 tables and after dessert at 3. The toast never happened. Keaton sat alone near the head table, looking at Audra's empty chair. My father moved through the room with a tight smile, trying to collect pieces of dignity that were no longer on the floor. My mother carried a tray of untouched rolls toward the kitchen, and Iona stepped in front of her. "Put it down, Meryl." My mother blinked. "They need—" Iona shook her head. "No." "Put it down." For a moment, my mother looked like a woman waking up inside her own body. Slowly, she lowered the tray onto the nearest table. Her hands were shaking. Then she stepped back. It was a small thing, a tray touching wood. But some rebellions begin with the first object a tired woman refuses to carry. I was in Madison when it happened, standing at the back of the Ashbourne ballroom while servers moved like music through the space. The donor dinner ran smoothly. The flowers arrived late, but we adjusted. One guest needed a low-sodium meal, and we had it ready. A microphone failed before the speech, and I switched it out before the speaker touched the stand. Nobody knew. That was the point. At 19, Mr. Ellery brought me a plate from the kitchen and said, "You have been on your feet all day. Please sit for 10 minutes. Please sit." 2 simple words. I sat in a quiet side room with roasted chicken, potatoes, green beans, and a real fork. Snow tapped the windows. My phone stayed off in my bag. For the first time in years, I worked Christmas Eve and did not feel used. I was tired, but the tiredness had dignity in it. The fallout arrived over the next few days in careful pieces. Pippa sent me screenshots of inquiry emails from people who had been at Frostmere. One came from Lenore Vask at the flower shop. Heard the truth. Need Northlight for our spring open house. Paid contract, obviously. Another came from the retired judge's daughter. Another from a banker's wife. Public humiliation is ugly, but public clarity can be useful. People had seen exactly what Northlight did by watching Frostmere try to function without it. My father did not call. Keaton sent one message at 1:18 in the morning. "You embarrassed us." I answered the next afternoon with one sentence. "You built the room that embarrassed you." He did not reply. Audra returned the ring by courier 3 days after Christmas. I only know because my mother told me later. The note was short, and my mother remembered every word because women remember the sentences that end things. It said, "Keaton, I cannot marry a man who uses his sister's work and calls it leadership. Please do not contact me." Niles Pell withdrew all investment conversations. Frostmere lost 6 bookings in January, then 2 more in February. My father blamed the weather, then the economy, then people making private matters public. He blamed everything except the fact that he had tried to build a future on unpaid labor and a lie. That was his pattern. A man who spends years being served often mistakes consequences for betrayal. My mother sent me one text on New Year's morning. Not a speech, not an apology full of excuses. Just 6 words. I put the tray down. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because I understood what it had cost her to type it. My mother had spent most of her life smoothing my father's rough edges with her own skin. She had asked me to disappear because someone had once taught her that good women keep the room comfortable. I was angry with her. I loved her. Both things were true, and I stopped trying to make one cancel the other. In late January, I met Meryl at a coffee shop on the west side of Harthwick, not at Frostmere. That mattered. I needed a table that did not belong to my father. She arrived early and sat near the window with her gloves folded in her lap. She looked older than she had on Christmas Eve. Or maybe I was finally seeing the tiredness without the house lights making it look like grace. For a while, we talked about ordinary things. Snow, the bakery closing early, a neighbor's hip surgery. Then she looked at me and said, "I thought keeping peace was love." Her voice broke on the last word. "I did not understand I was asking you to disappear." I did not reach for her hand right away. Comfort can become another job if you are not careful. I let the words sit between us. Then I said, "You were." She nodded. A tear slipped down her cheek, and for once, she did not wipe it away fast. I told her my terms. No more free event labor. No more emergency calls that begin with guilt. No using Northlight's name, photos, staff, systems, or vendor relationships without a signed contract. No telling people Keaton runs what I built. No asking me to stand behind a room where I am not welcome to sit. My mother listened. She did not argue. She did not say your father will be upset. She did not ask me to be the bigger person, which usually means be smaller so someone else can stay comfortable. When I finished, she said, "I understand." I believed that she wanted to. I was not sure yet if she could. That is the thing about boundaries. People do not prove they respect them by crying at the first conversation. They prove it later, when the old pattern reaches for your throat and they choose not to help it. Keaton took longer. Men like my brother do not change because they are corrected. They change, if they change at all, because the world stops rewarding the performance. Without Audra, without the Pells, without the easy story of him as Frostmere's future, he had to stand in the building and face the work. Real work is not photogenic. It is inventory, payroll, complaints, unbroken thermostats, vendor deposits, guest allergies, staff turnover, and apology emails. In February, Pippa received a message from Frostmere's general inbox asking for a quote for spring staffing. It was written by Keaton. Not friendly, not warm, but formal. Attached was a request for contract terms. Pippa forwarded it to me with one sentence. "Look who learned what a business is." I laughed so hard I had to put my coffee down. We did not give them a family discount. Pippa made sure of that. Frostmere paid half up front like everyone else. The old balance did not disappear either. My father hated it. I could tell from the way the check arrived with no note, but it arrived. Not all of it, enough to start. The first payment was $5,000, and when I deposited it, I did not feel victory the way people think revenge should feel. I felt space. Space in my chest, space in my calendar, space around my name. Money matters, but what mattered more was that the payment proved something my family had avoided for years. My work had a cost. My time had a number. My skill had a boundary. Love did not erase the invoice. At the end of winter, I found the black apron in a Northlight storage bin. Pippa must have tossed it in during the Christmas Eve pickup. It was folded the same way I had left it, still clean, still heavy. In one pocket was an old name tag Keaton had ordered for me years earlier for some open house. It said Brynna Caldrow, service. I stood there in the storage room between racks of linens and stacks of polished glassware, holding that little plastic tag. For a long time, that was who I had been to them. Service. Not daughter, not owner, not woman, not person, service. I did not smash it. I did not need that kind of scene. I put the name tag in my desk drawer as a reminder, not of what I was, but of what I survived. Then I dropped the apron into a donation bag. A week later, Pippa placed a new brass desk plate outside my office. I had not asked for it. She pretended it was a branding decision, but her eyes were too bright when I saw it. The plate said, Brynna Caldrow, owner, Northlight Tables. I ran my fingers over the letters. Owner. A simple word. A word my brother had tried to soften with, technically. A word my father had tried to bury under family duty. A word my mother had not known how to defend. But there it was, fixed to the door, reflecting the light from the front window. For once, my name was not on a service sheet. It was not behind the room. It was not written in someone else's emergency. It was on the door. People still ask me if I ruined Christmas. The answer is no. I did not ruin it. I did not cut the power. I did not steal the food. I did not lie to the guests. I did not embarrass my family with anything except the truth they had been using me to hide. I simply removed my company, my labor, my staff, my systems, and my silence. What collapsed after that was not Christmas. It was the performance. It was the polished version of Frostmere House where my father was wise, my brother was capable, my mother was peaceful, and I was happy to serve from the shadows. So that is what happened the year my family forced me to serve everyone. I folded the apron. I updated the QR code. I walked out of the room I had built and let them stand inside it without me. And when their perfect Christmas collapsed, I finally understood something that should not have taken me 32 years to learn. A family that only values you when you are useful is not loving you. It is operating you. And sometimes the first step toward freedom is not revenge, not rage, not a speech in the middle of the room. Sometimes it is simply putting down the tray, picking up your own name, and leaving the lie to serve itself. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Before we leave this story, let's slow down and look at what really happened here. Not just the Christmas dinner, not just the QR code, not just the black apron. The real thing that happened was much deeper. Brynna was not angry because she had to help one time. She was hurt because her family had turned her help into a job, her job into a duty, and her duty into an identity. That is a very different kind of pain. When someone asks you for help once, that can be love. But when they expect you to carry everything again and again, without respect, without payment, without even a seat at the table, that is not love anymore. That is use. What makes this story powerful is that Brynna did not begin as a weak person. She was skilled, she was professional, she had her own company, her own clients, her own systems, and her own name. That is important to notice. Many times, people think exploited people are helpless. But sometimes the person being used is actually the strongest person in the room. They are the one who knows how to fix things. They are the one everyone calls in an emergency. They are the one who remembers the details, solves the problems, and protects the image of the family. The problem is not that they have no power. The problem is that everyone around them has learned how to benefit from their power without respecting the person behind it. Look at Frostmere House. From the outside, it looked beautiful. Snow, lights, warm windows, old family name, perfect holiday feeling. But behind that beauty was Brynna's labor. She was the one holding it together. She booked the staff. She handled the vendors. She fixed mistakes before guests saw them. She paid costs. When the family delayed payment, she gave the house a professional face while her father and brother collected the praise. This is a very real lesson. Sometimes a family, a business, or even a relationship looks perfect from the outside because one quiet person is carrying all the hidden weight. People clap for the person standing in front, but they never see the person holding the whole stage from behind. The black apron in this story is not just an apron. It is a symbol. It shows exactly how Brynna's family saw her. They did not give her a chair. They gave her a uniform. They did not say, "Come celebrate with us." They said, "Stand behind us and serve." That is why the seating chart hurts so much. Her name was missing from the family table, but it was clearly written on the service sheet. That one small detail tells the whole truth. Sometimes disrespect is not loud. Sometimes it is written quietly on paper. Sometimes it is shown in who gets a seat and who gets a job. Sometimes it is shown in who gets thanked and who gets expected. Keaton's behavior is also important. He was not just lazy. He was taking credit for a world he did not build. He wanted investors to believe he was ready to run Frostmere House, but he could not even answer basic questions when the real system was removed. That is a strong lesson about fake leadership. Real leadership is not standing in a nice suit and saying, "My team." Real leadership is knowing the work, respecting the people, understanding the numbers, and taking responsibility when things go wrong. Keaton wanted the title without the weight. He wanted the applause without the labor. And when Brynna stepped away, his image collapsed because there was nothing solid under it. Vance, the father, represents another kind of problem. He used words like family, tradition, duty, and loyalty. Those words sound beautiful, but in this story, they were used like tools of control. Family serves before family sits sounds noble at first. But who was always serving? Brynna. Who was always sitting? Keaton. That is how unfair systems often survive. They hide behind good words. They use love language to demand free labor. They use guilt to avoid responsibility. They use tradition to protect comfort for some people and exhaustion for others. A family rule is not automatically good just because it is old. If a rule always hurts the same person, it is not tradition. It is a pattern of use. Meryl, the mother, is painful in a different way. She is not the loud villain. She is not stealing credit, not like Vance. She is not stealing credit like Keaton. But she still helped the system continue. She asked Brynna to help just this one night. She asked her to understand. She asked her to keep peace. This is something many people recognize. Sometimes the person who hurts you is not the person shouting. Sometimes it is the soft voice asking you to accept pain so the loud person does not get upset. Meryl had probably spent years surviving that same house. But surviving a system does not give you the right to pass that system down to your daughter. Her best moment comes when Iona tells her, "Put it down," and she finally puts the tray down. That tray is more than food. It is years of silence. It is years of keeping peace. It is the first small sign that she understands. Now, let's look at Brynna's revenge, because this is the part that makes the story different from a simple argument. Brynna does not scream. She does not make a scene before the event. She does not insult anyone. She does not damage the house. She does not lie. She does something much stronger. She removes what belongs to her. Her staff, her systems, her rentals, her digital program, her company name, her unpaid labor, and most importantly, her silence. That is why the revenge feels clean. She does not create a fake problem. She stops solving a real problem for free. And when she stops, the truth becomes visible. And the QR code twist is powerful because it is modern and quiet. Brynna does not stand in the room with a microphone. She does not have to beg people to believe her. The facts speak for her. The guests scan the code expecting a menu, but they find the truth. That moment is important because it shows how professional truth can be stronger than emotional shouting. The notice is calm. It is factual. It says Northlight Tables is not providing services because of unpaid invoices and unauthorized use of company materials. That kind of truth is hard to fight because it is not dramatic. It is documented. And in a room full of people who care about reputation, documentation can be louder than anger. Iona Bellwether's role is also very important. She is the witness. She sees what the family wanted hidden. Every strong story like this needs someone who names the truth out loud. Brynna had already made the boundary, but Iona gives the moment its moral voice. Her line, "You made her serve the room she built," is the heart of the entire story. That sentence explains everything. Brynna built the event. Brynna built the system. Brynna built the professional image. But the family wanted her behind everyone else, serving the same room she created. That is not just rude, that is erasure. One of the biggest lessons here is that being useful is not the same as being loved. This is a hard lesson, but it is necessary. Some people love what you do for them, not who you are. They love your help, your money, your work, your patience, your cooking, your planning, your emotional support, your ability to fix problems. But when you stop doing those things, their love suddenly becomes anger. That tells you something. Real love may be disappointed when you say no, but it will still respect your humanity. Use gets angry when the service stops. Another lesson is that boundaries often look cruel to people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Brynna's family called her selfish and embarrassing because they were used to her saying yes. But saying no is not cruelty. Asking someone to disappear so others can shine is cruelty. Refusing unpaid labor is not betrayal. Taking credit for someone else's company is betrayal. Walking away from disrespect is not destroying the family. The family was already broken. Brynna only stopped decorating the broken parts with her own effort. We should also notice the difference between work and exploitation. Brynna still worked on Christmas Eve. She went to the Ashbourne Hotel and helped run another event. But that work felt different because it came with respect, payment, a contract, and a seat. That contrast is very important. The story is not saying service is shameful. Service can be professional. Service can be beautiful. Hospitality can be meaningful. The problem is not serving. The problem is being forced to serve people who refuse to see you as a person. When work is respected, it gives dignity. When work is demanded without respect, it becomes a cage. The ending with the nameplate is simple but strong. Brynna moves from service to owner. That is not just a title change, it is an identity change. For years, her family tried to define her by what she could do for them, but at the end, she chooses her own name and her own position. She does not need to burn the apron or make a dramatic speech. She only needs to stop wearing the role they forced on her. That is a mature kind of victory. It is not noisy, but it is permanent. So what can we learn from Brynna? First, your labor has value, even when people act like it is natural. Second, love should not require you to disappear. Third, if someone keeps calling your skill help, ask yourself who is getting the benefit and who is paying the cost. Fourth, a boundary does not need to be loud to be powerful. Fifth, when people take credit for your work, documentation matters. Keep records, keep contracts, keep proof. Respect your own work enough to protect it. And maybe the biggest lesson is this. You do not always need to fight for a place at a table that was designed to keep you standing. Sometimes the better choice is to build your own table, put your own name on the door, and stop serving the lie. Brynna did not ruin Christmas. She revealed what Christmas had become in that house. She showed everyone that the perfect event was not perfect because of Vance, not because of Keaton, not because of the old family name. It was perfect because she had been quietly making it that way for years. If this story stays with us, it should stay as a reminder. Do not wait until you are completely empty before you admit you are tired. Do not let people rename your sacrifice as duty just because it helps them sleep better. And do not confuse being needed with being valued. Brynna was needed for years, but she was not valued until she stepped away. That is the painful truth. Sometimes people only see the person holding everything together when that person finally lets go. In the end, this story is not only about revenge, it is about self-respect. It is about a woman who stopped asking, "How can I save this night?" and started asking, "Why am I always the one being used to save everyone else?" That question changed everything. And for anyone listening who has been the unpaid worker, the quiet fixer, the family problem solver, the one who always serves before sitting, remember this: your kindness is valuable, but it should never become your prison. You are allowed to put the tray down. You are allowed to protect your name. You are allowed to leave the lie to serve itself. The end